Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Music of the Week. As always, 6 albums to go through, so let's go through 6 albums. We begin with the band that I've always had quite the soft spot for, even more than most people. We have All Time Low and their 10th offering. Let me just make sure I'm getting that right. Yeah, 10th offering, bloody hell. Titled Everyone's Talking. And I think this is really good stuff from them. I think we needed something a bit more grounded because of how weird Tell Me I'm Alive could be. So I'm giving this a B+. I think it's got a really fun vibe in terms of production. It's got some really good stuff. I do think on occasion too many things can sort of clash, but it's quite bright feeling and adds more than it takes away. Also, it was kind of produced by two of the band members, those being Alex Gaskarth and Jack Barakat, but it was also produced by like 4 other people, and I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense to me because this was released through like 3 labels as well, but mostly the band's own imprint titled Basement Noise, so I'm just thinking, if it was mostly released through that, why didn't all 4 just produce it themselves? They probably could have gotten something better, but the overall mix is good enough, I think. And also, no involvement by Fueled by Ramen, so I'm completely fine with that. Fuck that label in particular. Lyrics I also quite like as well. It's got the band's usual stuff surrounding relationships, and it's also quite honestly, and maybe a little bit familiar, but still their more matured stuff. I think they're allowed to get more mature, as I think most of the band members are married now, and I think one of them might have a kid. The only one I do know is married is Alex Gaskarth, because he's the only one with a Wikipedia page, so I haven't really looked into it much, but maybe the others have too, and if they do, it wouldn't really surprise me much. I do quite like the performances of, well, one thing I'll highlight though is Jack Barakat himself. I think he might be the standout here, and his guitar work has improved massively. He even gets a chance to do some really good guitar solos for the first time in fucking ages, and he's got really good guitar solos, and I also quite like the rest of the band too, obviously. I also quite like the structure. I think the first 2/3 of the album are a lot more fun, but it does get a bit muddled and a bit too over the top near the home stretch. There's 15 songs, and there didn't really need to be 15 songs. I get that there's more bits of experimentation. It's probably the most experimental album, I would say, but like in a way that works much better for them. But I do feel like it can get maybe a bit overstuffed near the end. I also quite enjoy the instrumentation. It's got really fun and fast pacing at times, and really good reliable rhythm section, and really good guitars. And yeah, just really like this album, really good stuff. I sort of scratched the chair there, that's fine, we'll keep that in. Really good stuff from the band, as you would expect. I will say, we're still quite a ways away from the greatness of Don't Panic, or at least Good Morning Sunshine. I think that was a 2021, which I also quite liked. But it's All Time Low. I'm glad that they're still around and they're still putting out really good stuff. I do think this is a really good thing, and especially, because their last one was a bit weird, and also it was released on Fueled by Ramen, which is a bad label. Next we go back quite a ways for a band called Biohazard and their new album Divided We Fall. This is a hardcore punk band that formed in Brooklyn in the 80s initially, and it's getting a B. Yeah, that is the grade I gave it, just making sure. I think it's really good hardcore punk stuff in terms of instrumentation. There's really good mixes of rap and groove metal too, and to be fair, it kind of only does those things, but it's in a sort of New York hardcore kind of way. I also fairly enjoy the lyrics. There is a lot of political stuff. In fact, that's the main focus. And I think the main theme of the album is probably best summed up with the title of the first song, which is simply Fuck the System. Like, there's not really any subtlety or nuance to it. In fact, I could probably say that about the entire album, but I can appreciate simplicity, and sometimes you have to be direct with something like this, and I think the performances are pretty solid. I will highlight drummer Denny Schuler. I think he's really good on the kit here, and, good hardcore punk needs good hardcore punk drumming, and Denny Schuler is a really good hardcore punk drummer from the one album I've heard him on, which is this one. Production I wasn't super keen on. It was handled by someone named Matt Hyde, who I think I've gone over before. The name is familiar to me, especially in punk production, but it doesn't really add a lot. I think the raw approach is good, but it did need a bit of, neatening up at times. And again, that straightforward thing can also be applied to the pacing and structuring overall. I like the straightforward approach, but some songs feel really familiar really quick, and the style mix doesn't actually do a lot to mix things up. It just feels like the 3 genres that I mentioned earlier, just all in each song. And only 11 songs, 38 minutes, 8 seconds. It's not going to take up too much of your time, but it can sort of drag. Even despite that, however, it's got some really good stuff. I like a lot of the choruses, and I think the guitar work on this album is really fucking good. A lot of really good guitar work, really good guitar solos, leaning sort of thrash in some areas, and it's their first album in 13 years, is it? Yeah, 13 years, I do mention that. So maybe it can feel maybe a tad dated in that way, but it actually does a lot to not feel that way, and I like that it tries to fit with the modern political sensibilities, so I will give points for that alone. So the previous band I covered first formed in the 80s, and I think broke up maybe once or twice. This next band formed in 2008 and broke up twice, and I don't really know how they've come back twice. But it's a band called Good Luck with their new album Big Dreams to Mister. This is a sort of folk-leaning indie emo band. And give this one an A-. I think this was really good stuff. The lyrics are fucking brilliant. I like the themes of the troubles of growing older and parenthood, and yeah, I think it would make sense that the band are parents now, which makes sense given that the previous hiatus was quite a while ago. But they're written in a really depressing and honest and open way. Like, just they come off as people trying to do their best with their new lot in life, and I really appreciate that. Instrumentation I also find quite enjoyable. There's really good pop punk with folk and emo and indie vibes, making things interesting. Even if it can get a bit jumbled at times, it does feel like it doesn't really know where to put what bits, But I think it does a good enough job with it. I also quite like the performances. The band are really good. And everyone fits their roles wonderfully, and I'll highlight frontwoman slash bassist Ginger Alford. She's got a really good voice for this sort of like Midwest style. I think it's Midwest, they're from Bloomington, Indiana, so yeah, it makes sense. But the band are great. I also quite like the structuring. I do think it can blur a bit at times despite the interesting style mix, but there is a solid enough core formula, and I like how much they rely on it, but at times don't stick to it too hard. I think that's a really good balance that is delicately struck. I also quite enjoy the production. It's really organic, but I feel like maybe it could have done a better job of cleaning things up at times, but it does a better job than Biohazard's album did, and yeah, really good stuff, and really honest, and I think it was 20 years since their last one. No, sorry, their first album 14 years, but it was 20 years ago that they last broke up. No, it was 2020. It was 2004. Obviously, I'll correct it if I'm wrong, but yeah, for a band, sorry, that took a while. But for a band that hasn't been around a while, I think that they came off a bit better than Biohazard did, and they were out for longer technically if you want to compare numbers, but really good stuff and a really good genre mix that I've grown to like more recently as I've gotten older. So yeah, mixing all that up and putting out a really good album in this style, I appreciate it, and hopefully they don't have another breakup and then reform in 10 years for the next one, because I quite like this one. Next up, we have a band that released a critically acclaimed debut last year and have released a sequel this year. It is The Last Dinner Party with their second album, My Second Dance With Them, from The Pyre. And I'm giving this one a B+, not because of any fault of the band, right? I actually quite like the instrumentation. I like that there's more of a lean on the artsy sort of rock side and less on the baroque side, but that is mixed in quite well to give an air of theatricality to things. There's really good layering on it, and I quite like the feel, and there's really good experimentation that makes it up quite nicely. Lyrics are also quite solid. I actually quite like the writing style, and there's really good themes about transformation and the queer themes that they tackled on their debut. But the storytelling at times makes me think that this was going to be a concept album, and I have one clue as to why it's not, because the album label was Island Records. And people know that I don't like Island Records. In fact, that was my main problem with their debut. I think if they weren't on that album, and I think if it weren't for so much executive meddling, oh god, I don't really like that, and I think that these guys should just leave Island. I don't think it's a good fit for them, because they have this really unique identity, and they're on a label that doesn't let you have an identity. I do quite like the performances. There's really good band chemistry, and I'll highlight Abigail Morris. She's really starting to come into her own as a frontwoman. I also quite like the production. However, I will say this was not produced by the same person that produced their debut, because that was someone named James Ford. This one was produced by someone named Marcus Drafts, and he still does a good job. This one was going to be produced by James, and he almost made it through the entire thing. However, he did discover that he had leukemia late last year, because that's when the band started recording this album. So I wish him the best recovery, and I hope he does get better from it. And then lastly is structure, and it kind of feels weird to say there's probably my least favourite part of the album. It's got really good songs and hooks, but it goes through its good ideas way too fucking fast, and the last 2/3 of the album feel a bit, padded at times. It's sort of the same problem that their debut had in that way, where it had all these interesting things, but again, I think some stupid ass exec just got in the way and just fucking meddled with no, you shouldn't save the best song for last on this 10-song album, you should put it fourth. Yeah, the best song on this album is This Is the Killer speaking, excuse me. And it's the fourth song on the album. I think it should have been the closer because holy shit, what a great song it is. And this is genuinely a really good album. But the reason I'm giving it a B plus is not because I want to begrudge it an A minus. But just fucking leave Island. Loves, girls, thems, theys. Just leave Island. They're not a good label. If you have all your own ideas, don't go on an album that's not going to... don't go on a label, excuse me, that is not going to let you express them to the fullest. You have so much potential. Fucking explore it. Let it be free and go somewhere else that's not fucking Island, please. I know that they're not watching this, obviously, but... goddamn, just... no more Island records. Next up, we have bands who actually covered their debut back in 2023, but that was a catch-up review, so it wasn't a proper one. And this is their sequel. This is a band called Military Gun with their second album titled God Save the Gun. And I wasn't super keen on the last one because I feel like it was a bit too short, despite all the innovative ideas that they had. I feel like the production was a little bit off as well. This one gets A+, is pretty much entirely fucking everywhere, and I will tell you why. Now, first of all, let's start with the lyrics and why they're good. The themes tackling very personal feelings of addiction and depression and suicide, and I think my favourite part is the fact that the album's main theme is not just dealing with those, but the after effects that going through those things can have on other people, especially if you go through those things in a really toxic and bad way. Like, it's actually explored really fucking wonderfully, and yeah, I've tackled albums that have done those sort of things before, but god damn, like, it's so cohesive and well realised as a concept, and even though it's not a concept album, it's really fucking well handled. Structure is also absolutely fantastic, mainly because I love that there's always something happening. And the mash of tempos really keep things exciting. This is, by the way, a sort of hardcore punk, melodic hardcore leaning, post-hardcore punk thing. It's really difficult to describe Military Gun's style and pigeonhole it, because I don't think they want to be pigeonholed, but this feels more like punky in terms of, well, compared to the previous album, but like, again, there's always something happening, and when you think it's going to get boring, they somehow manage to spice things up on, like, not just the next song, but basically the next sentence, or the next, like, scale. It is so interesting how much there is going on. Instrumentation is also fantastic. The more punk lean is really good, but it feels like these guys have really developed a signature sound quick, and also, good lord, the fucking bass work. But yeah, I like that it explores the things that they did on the previous album. And this album is 10 minutes longer than that one, so it just lets them explore things more, which is fucking great. Production's fantastic. Like last time, it was produced by the band's frontman Ian Shelton alongside someone named Riley McIntyre, who did not produce their debut, I don't think, with Ian, but is here for this one, and yeah, really good stuff there. Also, this one was released through Loma Vista, which is a really fucking good label. But I also really just love the raw and open-cut feel of the wound to the engineering, and there's a really good approach of less is more, and I fucking love it. And also really like the performances. No one puts a bad shift in. I'm not even going to pick a standout. Just everyone's absolutely on their fucking game here. Everyone is just enjoying themselves and going through it. And you could fucking feel it because, god damn, I was not expecting this. Like, on occasion, I have done the old, like, debut was good, but it did have some things holding it back. Let's see what their second one can do, right? And yeah, I think this is another album that can fit into that category, because I enjoyed bits of their debut, but I feel like it really needed time to grow and expand and become more than it is. I'm so fucking glad that they did this on this one, because holy hell, this is a top 30 maker, potentially even a top 10 maker. Again, making it very fucking difficult for me to rearrange my list, which I really need to start doing, but absolutely loved pretty much everything about this. Huge recommend from me. And to cap it off, we have Sabaton with their new album, Legends. Now, I do like me a bit of Sabaton, even though I'm only a sort of recent fan. I think my first album by them was The Great War in 2019. And I'm giving this one a B. I think it's really good stuff. It is what Sabaton usually do. I am detracting points specifically for this one, though, because like with The Last Dinner Party, this one was released on a label that sucks, because their previous couple were out on Nuclear Blast, which are a pretty solid, reliable metal label to put albums through. This one was released on Better Noise, and nothing sounds good on Better Noise. In fact, I don't think there's a label right now that takes away a band's intent of artistic integrity and just turns everything into butt chug rock worse than Better Noise does, because every band on there sounds the fucking same except for Nothing More. That's it. So let's get the production out of the way. It's not really anything new, which means it's not bad, and this is the first time, I believe, that a guy named Jonas Kjellgren is producing for the album, producing for the band, excuse me. But again, it was put out through Better Noise, which is shit. Is just shit. I mean, Jonas did the best that he could, but I feel like anything signed to a Better Noise label is just not going to sound good by design. I do enjoy the lyrics. It is what the band usually goes over. There's a really good focus on, battles, but specifically this one is called Legends, and it focuses more on major war figures like Lu Bu, Genghis Khan, and Joan of fucking Arc. So, and she has my favourite song on the album with Made of Steel. Yeah, it's probably the best song on the album. It's about the coolest French person in history. So, I'll take it. I think the performances are also quite solid. Joachim Broden is still a really fucking good singer for this style of power metal, and yeah, not really any bad shifts in. I just wish that it felt like the band had more energy at times, but again, being assigned to a label that they don't really fit the mold of at all, probably hurt that a little bit, but everyone's still really good. Instrumentation is solid. Again, it's sort of what the band have always done, but I've always liked how layered the drumming and guitar and keyboards especially feel, and there's more of a keyboard focus at times on this one, which I actually quite like. I also feel like the structure is pretty okay. I think it's a bit slower than the normal efforts, but it's got enough going for it, and the band do keep trying to tell cool stories about the heroes and villains and the wars and fights that they love. And I think, again, like with the Last Dinner Party's album, this is not really Sabaton's fault, but, God, man, I feel like it might be more Sabaton's fault with this one, though, because they chose to sign with Better Noise, and I don't know, I just don't like that label at all, so I don't know, maybe they could leave it, or at least just put out a good album through it to prove that Better Noise is not a complete waste of everyone's fucking time. I have such a hateful look at that label, and I'm not entirely sure why. But, well, I am sure why, because I've gone over the fucking reasons so many times in my life and in these videos. But yeah, the band do their best, and, like with Last Dinner Party, just leave the label as soon as you fucking can. Please, for the love of God. But it's Sabaton, and Sabaton's still pretty cool. Next is favourite album cover and favourite song. I will say favourite cover goes to Sabaton with Legends. I really fucking love how it actually utilises things that were related to the people that they talk about. Yeah, it's just really cool looking, and also Sabaton album covers usually look really fucking awesome. Favourite song definitely goes to I Won't Murder Your Friend from Military Guns, God Save the Gun, because it deals most heavily with one of the album's themes of suicide, specifically losing a friend to it. As someone who has lost friends to that, it fucking hit me pretty hard, so yeah, I fully feel that sort of thing. And really good emotion to the performances, and a really fucking well-paced song too. And next is the albums I'll be covering for next week. We have the Acacia Strain with the USA from God Here, CF98 with Stupid Punk, Circle 60 with Gods of Dimension, Dayseeker with Creature and the Black Knight, Mammoth with The End, and Sumo Psycho with Neon Void. And that'll do it for me. Next thing you'll see me for will be tomorrow, the return to After Harsh Environment, as we have 4 weeks left, 3 weeks from tomorrow actually, until Defy the God 7, and that's going to be a fucking great show. I hope. I'm really hoping that my version of WrestleMania is always a good show. So I'll see you for that, and then probably over the weekend for more Let's Playing of Tunic. I'm hoping. As always, thank you for watching, you're awesome. Bye bye.